Oh, hi Brendan.
What's up?
What's up? I'm just taking a look at your recent view counts here for your latest videos.
Uh-huh.
They're not looking too good.
Well, recently I'm not promoting contemporary artists or featuring samples of music. I'm mostly talking about albums and bands from the 70s and the 80s.
Yeah, you and everybody else on the internet. Hey, it's your video series. I'm just saying, you want to get your views up, you're going to have to do something about it.
Sure. Like what? Like run around naked or blow something up?
You're the creative brains. I'm just a producer. Think of something.
Okay, so what I've gone and done is I prepared a list of the top, the 25 best ranked thrash metal albums of the 80s. Now this list is not based on my opinion. What I did was to consult the internet and I checked 11 lists. Those lists included lists of top 100s, top 50s, maybe top 50, top 25, top 10. And anytime an album appeared in the top 25 of a 100 list or in a top 20 or top 10 list, I gave it a little check mark. And at the end, the albums with the most check marks were tallied up and then organized into a list of top 25 or 25 best ranked. Now the actual lowest score for this list was 3, and several albums scored 3 points, meaning they appeared on 3 top 25 lists, top 10 lists, whatever. So actually the total number of albums is 29. And at the end I want to mention a few other albums that I personally really have an interest in. So let's just take a quick peek here. The lists I consulted were, on the internet, Metal Storm, 2 lists on Rate Your Music, personal lists, Loudwire, Heavy Blog is Heavy, Treblezine, Louder Sound, Metal Hammer, Revolver Mag, Watch Mojo, which was a top 10 list for sure, and the Metal Music Archives top 25 list, where you can actually adjust the parameters of the list. So I set the site's algorithm to the years 1983 to 1992 actually, and then albums with over 20 ratings. However, basically all the top ranked albums fell into the 1980s, which is a little different from old school death metal. I'm going to do a program on that too. Old school death metal actually starts a bit later and then goes into the early 90s, so interesting to note. Anyway, a basic background of thrash metal, of course, fast, heavy music was something that has been around for quite some time. You can go all the way back to Dick Dale and the Deftones in the early 60s there, with Miser Lou playing really fast-paced guitar music. And as music got heavier, you get into like Led Zeppelin's Communication Breakdown. Queen's Stone Cold Crazy is often cited as a proto-thrash metal song. Deep Purple, Fireball. Black Sabbath, Symptom of the Universe, Judas Priest, Exciter, Motorhead, Ace of Spades. And once you get into the 1980s, right around 79, 80, you get the new wave of British heavy metal, with some bands like Raven, for example, going for faster music sometimes. And then you get to 82 with Exciter and Anvil from Canada, where they start to intensify the music a bit more, going more for the speed and as well as heaviness. 1983 with Accept, Fast as a Shark, and then basically 1983 is the year that thrash metal kicks off officially on the record store shelves with Metallica's Kill 'Em All, Slayer's Show No Mercy. And from there on, just throughout the next several years of the 80s, thrash metal just becomes bigger and bigger. Okay, but let's take a look at our list here. So, starting with, I think it was 9 albums altogether that scored 3 points. We're going to take a look here. Oh, one of them was Metallica's And Justice for All, which I don't have at the moment. Sounds like the cat wants to go out. We paused the video. Show everybody your smiling puss face. Here we go. Alrighty. Alright, now we pause the video and set you outside. Right, so Metallica and Justice for All. Then another one. Voivod, Dimension Hatros. One of the 3 albums in the series where Voivod started to go from a kind of speed metal band into a progressive metal band. But with this science fiction theme, we take Killing Technology, Dimension Hatros, and Nothing Face. A trilogy of albums that I think are really the peak of their output. Not to say that their later stuff was bad, but yeah, those 3 albums, you can't go wrong with those. Anyway, another one here, a band I didn't know, Coroner. Yeah, I didn't know them, but very interesting. And I think the members they used to be roadies for Celtic Frost. Anyway, they put together a thrash metal band. This is, I think, their 3rd album, No More Color. It's starting to get a little technical here, and that's very interesting to note that by around 1989 we see thrash metal developing into more technical music as well. Similarly, it was happening with death metal too. Coroner, No More Color. Another 3-point album, Creator, Extreme Aggression. Also Coma of Souls, which I don't have. This is the reissue with this 28-page booklet. And a bonus disc of live material. Actually, I never heard this album until fairly recently, but it's quite good. I'm enjoying this one. Now, that was 2 Creator, because Coma of Souls. We also have 2 from Slayer with Hell Awaits and South of Heaven. Hell Awaits was my 2nd Slayer purchase after Haunting the Chapel, and I've always loved this album. Even when I got rid of all my cassettes back in the early 90s, and thought, oh, I'm never going to listen to this music again. Yeah, I could never forget this one here. And so it was really nice to get a hold of this. South of Heaven was the last Slayer album I bought on cassette back in those days. I didn't like it as much as I liked Hell Awaits. And actually, I totally missed Rain and Blood. Can you believe it? But yeah, now I understand much better what they were doing. And also Seasons of the Abyss as well. So yeah, good stuff. Like what I'm hearing. This, yeah, still one of my faves. Okay, a band I didn't know about, Artillery. This is a Danish band. Thrash, yes, but also getting pretty close to power metal because they do a lot of melodic lead guitar that seems to have a bit of a classical influence in it, which is something you could also hear on some songs by Accept. So I feel there is a kind of connection here between Accept and Thrash, and possibly leading into power metal. The vocal style also is less thrash and a little bit more closer to what Accept were doing, and the singer can really belt out some high notes there too. So yeah, interesting album. Another band I didn't know about, Forbidden, and this album here, Forbidden Evil, their debut. Quite surprising. Again, a singer who can really hit the notes, and also a band that's heading towards more technical playing. So very interesting album to hear. I'm not sure how the rest of their albums sound, but this was definitely a good purchase. This is why I actually made this list and consulted lists, because I wanted to know what thrash albums I had missed back in the day, what other things were out there that might be interesting for me. And so by consulting all these lists and preparing a list of the top 25, it led me to discovering some of these quite good albums. For example, Sepultura. Yeah, that's another band I heard about, but I never got into. This is Arise. It got 3 points. We'll also see Beneath the Remains, a little bit higher up on the list. Both albums, I really like them both. These are great albums, great band. And I also picked up, I forget which one it was, Morbid Dreams or something. Interesting to note that Sepultura's earlier stuff is often considered closer to black metal and death metal than thrash. Chronologically, actually, thrash probably should be first, but maybe Sepultura had more of a connection to the European sound with Hellhammer, Bathory, Celtic Frost, I don't know. Anyway, Arise. Now we're gonna also. Oh, I should also say what Flotsam and Jetsam, Doomsday for the Deceiver. I don't have it. Sodom, Agent Orange. I don't have it. Exodus, Fabulous Disaster. I don't have it. But those 3 albums also made it into the top 29, I guess, because we had so many albums scoring 3 points from 11 lists. Okay, so we move up to 4 points, positions 18 and 17. This is Celtic Frost to Megatherion. This, Into the Pandemonium and Morbid Tales, plus Hellhammer Apocalyptic Raids. I had them in the 1980s. I liked Morbid Tales a lot because of just the really heavy riffs and that guttural vocal style, which was kind of a precursor to death metal vocals, I think. This one here was really impressive, in part because 2 tracks include these heavy brass sections, and what are they, kettle drums? Just really goes well with the heavy guitar sound. And also they brought in some operatic vocalist singing on 1 or 2 tracks as well. So interesting stuff and very cool. The other one scoring 4 points was Testament, The New Order. I had this back in the 80s. I liked some tracks like Into the Pit, Disciples of the Watch, The Preacher. Really cool, heavy riffs, really great stuff. The one thing that I don't like about this album is that there are too many of these clean guitar, kind of mysterious music intros with distorted electric lead guitar, and in fact 2 instrumental tracks like that. So in total there are 5 tracks like this, and it just sounds like overkill. If they had done it, at least minimized it to 3, you know, like as an intro for 2 tracks, and then a final instrumental track on its own, it might have made sense, but I think it was overdone, and the rest of the album is really good. So they also do a cover of Nobody's Fault, an Aerosmith song from the Rocks album in '76. In my opinion, Aerosmith's one really heavy song, heavy metal type song from the 70s. The rest of their stuff is more hard rock, right? Rock and roll. That was one song where they got heavy, and Testament picked up on that, covered it here, did a pretty good job. Moving along, we are now going up to 5 points, and that brings us to Possessed, 7 Churches. Yes, it is definitely a thrash album, although it starts to point in the direction of death metal. Not because they have a song called death metal, the vocals are more, grim, horrifying, terrifying, deeper, roaring type vocals. Not death growl, but starting to take a step away from thrash. And of course the kind of dark satanic imagery is there, so it also gets pointed out by some black metal bands as well. Possessed, 7 Churches. Also with 5 points, Metallica, Master of Puppets. Yay. This is often considered one of the best heavy metal albums of all time, and they have really reached a high point in their music composition, I think, here, because Kill 'Em All was a straightforward thrash metal album. Then, by Ride the Lightning, I think because of the influence of Cliff Burton, who actually had music theory training, he started to give ideas to the band how they could make things a little more interesting, like put in a diminished chord instead of just a regular minor chord and so on. So their musicality began to develop. I mean, the level of what they were producing was getting a little bit higher, and Master of Puppets actually reaches the point where it will show up as a progressive metal album sometimes. And certainly Master of Puppets, the instrumental Orion, some other things they did here, it is really starting to show more intelligent music composition. So Master of Puppets, great album. Maybe because it's getting closer to progressive metal that it doesn't rank as highly as 2 of their other albums. Okay. Overkill, Years of Decay. Never was interested in Overkill. I just didn't get into them at the time, and later on, looking back, I wasn't so much into the vocals. But I heard so much about them from Scott Waters, right, on No Life Till Metal on the YouTube channel. So I thought, okay, I really should check them out. And they made the list, so why not? And actually, I quite like it. The vocals, yeah, not exactly to my taste, but I can get over it. I'm fine. They're good. Some of the riffs and the guitar sounds sound a little bit close to Metallica. It's like somewhere between Ride the Lightning and Master of Puppets or something like that. But Overall, yeah, quite an interesting album. I think it's their fourth, so the music is starting to mature. It's not just straightforward thrash all the way through. They're doing a little bit more. So yeah, I'll be checking out another Overkill album later on. Also with 5 points, we have Destruction Infernal Overkill, a German band, one of the big four of the German thrash bands of the 80s. I had this on cassette back in the 80s. Didn't like it as much as some of the other thrash bands, but still it was pretty good, and I hesitated to buy it again on CD, but it made the list, so I had to have it. And it's good to have it back again. It's fun to listen to. And I mean, these guys here, they're all with the bullets and the leather and studs and everything, so... and it's interesting also to hear just how the American take on thrash metal is different from the German take. I mean, the Germans, being Europeans, of course, had a different approach to it, and it's interesting. Okay. 6 points. Moving on to 6 points now. Metallica Kill 'Em All, the 1983 release, and basically the introduction of thrash metal to the record store shelves. There it is. Very good thrash album, some great riffs on here, really cool music. Definitely, as an 80s thrash album, you should have this in the collection, I think. Then, Annihilator, Alice in Hell. This is a double album, Alice in Hell, and what the heck is that one called again? Never Neverland, right? So, Annihilator, Canadian thrash band. Originally, guitarist Jeff Waters was in Toronto, moved to Vancouver, spent a few years there, got Annihilator, finally out with a record in 1989. Really cool, fast-paced thrash, but with quick change-ups, sudden tempo changes, sudden rhythm changes. It's very technical stuff, very exciting. And also, these two albums here are both very highly respected in thrash metal. So, cool stuff. Okay, one more with 6 points. Creator, Pleasure to Kill. Another German band, one of the big four. Loved this in the 80s. When I finally got rid of my stuff, Riot of Violence, the riff there stuck with me, and so finally I thought I have to bring this home again. Good opportunity to put together a thrash metal list and bring this in. So also one of the re-releases, they have the booklet inside, which I can't seem to be able to flip through here right now. Great stuff. The interesting thing is that when, according to the story inside, when the band went into the studio to record this, their second album, they brought in Slayer's Hell Awaits and Possessed Seven Churches and said to the producer, we want to make an album like this. And then he said, I think we can take it one step further. We can do better than that. And so they did. And I feel, listening to Slayer Hell Awaits and Possessed, and then this, these are the building blocks, the bridge that starts to go from thrash and leading towards death metal. It's still thrash, but the violence, the gore in the lyrics, the vocal style, yeah, it's starting to build away from thrash, although still in the thrash category. Cool stuff though. Creator, Pleasure to Kill. Okay, we're going to move on now to albums scoring 7 points. These are positions 9 to 4 on the list. We have Anthrax, Beyond the Living. Loved this one in the 80s, and even though I got rid of my cassettes, I was fairly quick to pick it up on CD. So this is a 1987 CD release. This is not a remastered version. It means that probably the dynamic range is better, but the volume is a little bit low. You have to crank it up more than a lot of these other albums, which I've got remastered. But anyway, still a classic album, and the only Anthrax album to appear on the list. Kind of a surprise. I'm interested also in Spreading the Disease, which gets mentioned on lists of top 100s, but not in top 25s. Anyway, Among the Living, Anthrax. Also cool because this is another, this is one of the big four, but this is an East Coast band. So the style is a little bit different, and the vocal style also with Joey Belladonna is also a little bit different from what we were hearing out of California. Okay, another 7-point album, Sepultura, Beneath the Remains. I already mentioned this here when we talked about Arise. Yeah, classic album, probably their most highest rated of all, and a very good companion album. Arise is a very good companion album to this one. Okay, and here's a band I had never heard of before, Dark Angel, and their debut, Darkness Descends. It's good. This is what you would imagine a thrash metal album of the 80s to sound like. It's got the speedy riffs, it has the kind of hoarse shouted vocals and occasional high-pitched screams. Great album, actually. One thing that really surprised me, Gene Holgan is the drummer. I did not know this. You know, I know Gene Holgan through Strapping Young Lad, and I heard later on he played on some albums by Death. So I decided to look him up on Wikipedia. He has also played with Testament, Zimmer's Hole, and his first recording band was Darkness Descends. However, his first recording appearance, according to Wikipedia, was as a doing backing vocals for Slayer's Show No Mercy. That's interesting. Anyway, Darkness Descends by Dark Angel. Yeah, very good. Okay, also with 7 points then we have 2 Megadeth albums, Rust in Peace and Peace Sells But Who's Buying. First 3 tracks on here, absolutely love them. And how different. They have like The Conjuring, which features the main guitar solo at the beginning of the song, after the intro. Wake Up Dead, they go from right into the song, then off to some different riff with a guitar solo, bring in the song a little bit, change the riff again, go to another guitar solo, wrap up with another piece of the song. So right off the bat here, we're seeing Megadeth doing a different style of song composition, the way they put songs together, and just so many cool riffs, really nice melodic, fast guitar solos. This one here, Rust in Peace, when I first got it, I wasn't really all that impressed. It didn't have what I felt was on here. However, it keeps showing up as one of the top ranked metal albums of all time. So I finally had to get it again on CD. This is the remastered and remixed version with some parts actually re-recorded. Same with this one here, as I sold off my old... Never did sell off this one. Anyway, whatever. I like it a lot better now. I can really appreciate why this is such a highly rated album, both for thrash and for metal in general. And let's see here, 7 points, also Metallica, Ride the Lightning. This was my first Metallica purchase way back when, I think around 1985. I remember somebody in my junior high school telling me about them, and I can tell you, my junior high school, we had a pretty good rocker crowd, but they were into Motley Crue, Whitesnake, Led Zeppelin, AC/DC, and so on. There were only about 2 or 3, or possibly 4, thrashers in my school anyway. And it was through one of them I heard about Metallica, Ride the Lightning. Totally blew my mind. Brilliant piece of work. Heavy, fast, awesome. And of course some bits of more delicate melodic parts with the classical guitar too. So yeah, really cool. Okay. 8 points. Only one album scoring 8 points. This is Testament's debut, The Legacy. I knew of The New Order. That's the only Testament album I ever got back in the 80s. So I took a long time to get into this one. Finally, I picked it up last year. This, again, is the original CD issue. It is not a remastered album. So, again, if you're listening to these other albums, like on your iPhone or something, and you come to this one, you have to knock up the volume 3 or 4 times in order to get the same level of decibels. Otherwise, this is a really quiet album. But yeah, terrific music, and I really understand why this is high up on the list. Interesting also, the big 4, Metallica, Megadeth, Slayer, and Anthrax, closely shadowing them is this band, and people have often said Testament could have easily made it the big 5. But another album, another band close behind, Exodus, Bonded by Blood, their debut back in, what is it? Doesn't say. This is the 1999 reissue. Yeah, I had this on cassette. Goofy cover, but really fast, aggressive, lyrically aggressive album. And always liked this one, so it was inevitable I had to get it on CD again. I also had Pleasures of the Flesh, I think their second or third album, which I bought on CD. The introduction is interesting. This kind of crazy guy talking. Life's kind of getting out of control, you know? Would you have me that ashtray? That whole bit was the only memorable thing of the whole album for me. It didn't have any standout tracks, whereas this one does, like Piranha, Bonded by Blood, Exodus. Very cool. So that's Exodus with 9 points. That means it appeared on 9 out of 11 lists in the top 25 or top 20 or top 10. Okay, The number one album that appeared on every list in the top 25 or higher was Slayer's Rain and Blood. And I find this quite curious because this is a really freaking intense album. After Hell Awaits, which had these longer songs of 5-6 minutes and almost progressive in a way, the way the song went through different riffs and motions, they just went for a super fast, killer heavy, knock your head to the ground kind of album here. And this is also one of the most highest rated metal albums of all time, Slayer, Rain and Blood. Okay, so that is with 11 points, and that is the top thrash album of 80s thrash based on those 11 lists. Now, I'd like to mention a few other albums that I have a big interest in. We talked about Voivod, Dimension Hatros. Maybe my favorite is Killing Technology. I just really liked, after War and Pain, I missed Roar, but after War and Pain, I felt there was really big steps being taken. They were still heavy speed metal type, but there was this further development happening in the music, which I now understand is kind of beginning of progressive metal as, you know, Voivod style. And again, there was that kind of hardcore punk feel sometimes to the vocals. So, love this album. Really have to get the t-shirt. Okay, another album and another important band, Nuclear Assault. I had Survive on cassette in the 80s. Really liked it. It is now super expensive to buy, so I don't have it. So I decided to get Handle with Care, which is their highest ranked album. Unfortunately, this Century Media 2011 release, the mastering is butchered. It is just loud and it does not sound very nice at all. It's not loud in a good way. It's loud in a like, we pushed the levels too far and it's been clipped. And I have heard nothing but complaints on the internet about the remastering of this album. Sad thing, because the music otherwise, it sounds like it should be good. Actually, the very first video I ever made for Music is a Journey, which I have not released yet, was a complaint, because around the time I got this, it seemed a lot of albums I was getting had this clipped sound, and just thought, okay, that's my first topic for Music is a Journey. Anyway, Nuclear Assault. Okay, Sodom. I never got into Sodom in the 80s. I heard that Sodom's early albums were closer to black metal in a way, so I was very curious. I got this one here, Persecution Mania. I think they had a debut and an EP and then this. I really like this. This is quite good. And again, we see the Germans going for the kind of gruffer vocal style. Very nice, Persecution Mania. I really should get Agent Orange though, because this is the one that actually made it on the list. Canadian band Razor. I had a couple of their albums in the 80s. Evil Invaders I bought again on CD, and then I decided to get this one because this showed up on people's top lists of top obscure thrash metal albums. Violent Restitution, I think it was their third or fourth album. The martial arts begins with a 26-second scream and music, although I suspect the scream might have been actually two screams put together. But anyway, really powerful. And Taste the Floor, there's a chainsaw in the song. Partway through, suddenly a chainsaw starts up. So, you know, you think Edward Van Halen used a drill. Alright, this is thrash. It's a chainsaw. Sounds pretty cool. Great album too. Really blistering thrash metal. Another Canadian band, Sacrifice. This is their typically highest ranked album, Forward Determination, their second album. I had Torment and Fire, the debut, on cassette. Torment and Fire is a little more, I don't know, blackish, deathish. This is really getting into thrash. I prefer the follow-up album, Soldiers of Misfortune. For me, that's musically more interesting. And I think aside from the debut, I have everything on CD now. They have these special reissues with like all this bonus live material. But the original albums are good. This one is good, but I like Soldiers of Misfortune better. Anyway, Sacrifice. Death Angel, I remember seeing this in the stores, but by the time it came out, my interest in thrash metal was waning, so I never picked it up. Actually, pretty good album though. Definitely a California thrash band. Interesting thing is that I think that members were between 12 and 15 or 16 years old when they recorded this, so I think the drummer was 12. You would not guess from listening to it though, except maybe the really shrill, screamed vocals sometimes, but it's typical of a lot of thrash bands out of California at the time. Anyway, Death Angel, the Ultraviolence. A band that showed up on a list somewhere, never heard of Protector, but another German band. This is Golem. Someone put it on their list of top 100 thrash albums or whatever. Decided to check it out. And yeah, it's quite good. I wouldn't say it belongs in a top 25, but as an addition to a thrash metal collection, Protector sound pretty good. They have one final song on here called Space Cake, though, which is really goofy, but interesting anyway. Space cake, space cake, space cake. Eat it, eat it, eat it. Another German band, I think it is, Exhumer, Possessed by Fire. This one showed up on a lot of top 100 lists, so I'd never heard of them before. I picked it up. Actually, it's quite a fairly well-regarded album, and German band, but with more of the California sound, I think, the vocal style and so on. And just, yeah, again, really good thrash album. Okay, and finally, I want to mention Aggression. This is a thrash band out of Quebec. This is from somewhere around 1987, I guess. This is really brutal stuff and really fast drumming sometimes. A lot of thrash drumming is just, you know, beating the drums faster than your typical song. But death metal, black metal have the kind of blast beat, and this seems to be an early form of blast beat, you know, I don't know. But anyway, it's very loose, the recording is very rough, so there's a lot of, you know, extra distortion, but just generally really fun, aggressive thrash album, so quite like that. Aggression are still around, although I think they did take a long break. They have 2 or 3 albums out. You can check them out on their webpage. Thrash metal from Quebec. Nice. Okay, that's all I have to say about 80s thrash metal. I should wrap this up before the video gets too long. Thanks for watching if you watched all the way through. There's going to be other stuff coming up, but I am putting together an old school death metal video as well. Black metal will be a little bit later on in the year. But anyway, that's it. So, enough for today. Again, thanks, and see you next time.